What if the purpose of life is not to reach the end, but to cherish every step we take along the way? As the day drew toward its close, the landscape of Galilee was bathed in a warm, golden light. The sky was painted with hues of amber, rose, and lavender, reflecting the beauty of the setting sun. Jesus and his disciples had been traveling for many days, their journey often filled with silence, as each disciple felt that their master was preparing them for something profound. They had shared many conversations with Jesus, moments of laughter and lessons learned along the way. But today there was a deep stillness around Jesus, a sense that he was about to reveal a mystery, something that would touch their souls in a way they hadn't yet experienced. As they walked, Jesus came to a halt on a gentle slope, near the top of a hill that overlooked the valley below. The olive trees swayed softly in the evening breeze, and there was a serene calmness in the air. He gazed out toward the horizon for a moment, then turned to his disciples, motioning for them to follow him up the hill. With reverence, they followed, feeling that whatever was about to happen would stay with them for the rest of their lives. At the top of the hill, the disciples came to an unexpected sight. Standing tall but incomplete, there was a large wooden ladder. Its base was firm on the ground, but it reached only halfway to the heavens. The upper half of the ladder was missing, as if someone had started building it and then abandoned the work. It was an odd sight, this unfinished structure leading nowhere. The disciples stared in silence, their eyes full of questions. They had seen Jesus perform miracles, heal the sick, calm storms, and speak words of truth that had shaken the very foundations of their beliefs. But this, an unfinished ladder? It was puzzling. Peter, ever the one to speak up, stepped forward. His brow furrowed and his voice was filled with confusion. "Rabbi, what is this ladder? Why does it stop before it reaches the heavens?" Jesus smiled at Peter, a gentle smile full of understanding. He approached the base of the ladder and placed his hand on the first rung, his touch deliberate and full of meaning. "This," he said softly, "is the ladder to the heavens. But as you can see, it is unfinished." The disciples exchanged uncertain glances. James, who often pondered deeply, was the next to speak. "If the ladder is unfinished, how are we to reach the heavens, Master? How can we complete our journey if the way is incomplete?" Jesus gazed at James with great tenderness and motioned for the disciples to come closer. "That, my friends, is the very question I wish you to reflect on," he said, his voice calm but filled with significance. "Many people believe that the purpose of life is to reach the top, to reach perfection, to complete the journey. But look closely at this ladder. It's not the top that matters." He stepped onto the first rung of the ladder, his movements slow and deliberate. The wood creaked gently beneath his weight, but he stood firm. "The first step," he said, "is where faith begins. It is the moment you choose to climb, the moment you trust that the journey is worth starting." The disciples listened intently, their hearts slowly absorbing the depth of his words. Each of them had their own struggles with faith, times when they had doubted, times when they had been afraid. But now, hearing Jesus speak, they began to understand that the act of taking that first step was itself an act of courage, a leap of faith that set everything in motion. Jesus climbed higher, reaching the third rung. He paused and looked down at his disciples. "Here," he said, "you will encounter struggles. You will face doubt, fear, and uncertainty. There will be times when you wonder if the ladder will hold you, if the climb is worth it. But each step, no matter how difficult, is part of the journey. Each step matters." His words struck deep into the hearts of the disciples. Thomas, who often wrestled with doubt, felt a stirring in his soul. He had always wondered if he was strong enough, if his faith was enough. But now, watching Jesus climb this unfinished ladder, he began to realize that the journey was not about being perfect. It was about persevering even when the way seemed unclear. Jesus continued to climb until he reached the final rung, just before the ladder's abrupt end. He placed his hand on the last solid piece of wood and looked down at the disciples with a tender gaze. "This part," he said, "the unfinished portion, represents the mystery of faith. You are not meant to see the end from the beginning. You are not meant to know every step of the journey before you take it. The climb itself is the destination. The disciples felt a shift in their hearts as the truth of his words settled within them. They had spent so much of their lives believing that the goal of their faith, of following Jesus, was to reach a final destination, a place where all would be clear, where they would achieve perfection. But now, standing before this unfinished ladder, they began to understand that the true journey of faith was not about reaching the end. It was about the climb, the trust and perseverance they showed with each step. Peter's heart was full as he stepped forward, his voice trembling with emotion. "Master," he whispered, "I have spent so much time worrying about being perfect, about reaching the top, that I forgot to cherish the steps along the way." Jesus descended from the ladder, his feet touching the earth once more, and walked toward Peter. He placed a hand on Peter's shoulder, his eyes full of love. "Peter," he said softly, "it is not perfection I ask of you. I ask only that you continue to climb. Each step you take, no matter how uncertain, is a step of faith. And with every step you grow closer to God, not because you reach the top, but because you never stop climbing." Tears welled up in Peter's eyes. He had always been so focused on doing everything right, on proving himself worthy, that he had forgotten that the journey itself was the gift. Now, standing before his master, he realized that every struggle, every doubt, had been a part of his growth, a part of his journey toward God. The other disciples stood in quiet reflection, their hearts full of understanding. Each of them thought back to the times when they had faltered, moments when they had questioned their faith, when they had been afraid of the unknown. But now they understood that these moments were not signs of failure. They were part of the climb, part of the sacred journey they were on. As the sun began to sink lower in the sky, casting long shadows over the hillside, Jesus gathered his disciples close once more. His voice was filled with tenderness and love, a love that embraced each of them individually. "Remember, my beloved friends," he said, "life's journey is not about reaching the end, but about each step you take along the way. In every rung of the ladder, in every moment of struggle, in every doubt, you are growing closer to God." The disciples, deeply moved by his words, felt a profound sense of peace. John, who had always felt a special connection to the heart of Jesus, spoke softly, his voice filled with wonder. "So, Master, the journey itself is the destination?" Jesus smiled, his eyes filled with the light of truth. "Yes, John. The climb is the destination. And when you trust in God, when you embrace each step with faith, you are already closer to the heavens than you realize." The disciples stood together, united in a new understanding. They had spent so much of their time worrying about the end, about reaching the top of the ladder, about being perfect, about achieving something they couldn't even fully understand. But now they knew that the true journey was not about reaching a final destination. It was about the climb, about the faith and love they showed with each step they took. As the sky deepened into shades of purple and orange, Jesus' final words lingered in their hearts. "The journey is where you find God. The climb, my beloved friends, is where you find love." And so, with every step they took down the hill, the disciples felt a sense of peace they had never known before. They understood now that the ladder, though unfinished, was exactly as it was meant to be. It was not a symbol of something incomplete. It was a symbol of faith, of trust in the journey, of knowing that each step brought them closer to God's heart. Days passed, and the disciples continued to reflect on the lesson of the unfinished ladder. They realized that their entire walk with Jesus had been about the climb. From the moment they left their fishing nets, their tax booths, and their old lives behind, they had been on a journey. And while they had often been caught up in trying to understand where it would lead, now they knew that every moment had been sacred. Every conversation, every struggle, every act of service was a rung on the ladder of faith. The climb, they realized, was never meant to be easy. It was meant to challenge them, to grow them, to stretch their faith in ways they couldn't yet understand. And the beauty of it was that they didn't have to reach the top to find peace. Peace was in every step they took as long as they kept climbing. Thomas, who had always struggled with doubt, began to see his journey in a new light. He realized that his questions, his uncertainties, were not signs of weak faith, but invitations to keep climbing. Every time he questioned, every time he doubted, it was an opportunity to trust a little more. To trust that even though he couldn't see the end, the climb was worth it. Peter, too, felt a profound shift in his heart. He had always been so concerned with proving himself worthy, with being the strongest, the most faithful. But now he understood that Jesus wasn't asking him to be perfect. Jesus was asking him to keep climbing, to trust that every fall, every mistake was part of the journey. And in that trust, Peter found a peace he had never known before. Weeks later, as they sat around a fire, Peter turned to John and said, "I've been thinking about that ladder, John. It's strange, isn't it? We spent all this time thinking we had to get somewhere, that we had to become something perfect. But now I see it was never about that." John, his heart always tuned to the deeper meaning of Jesus' words, smiled gently. "Yes, Peter. The climb itself is the greatest gift. Every step we take brings us closer to the truth, to love, to God." The disciples continued to live their lives with this new understanding. They traveled from town to town, sharing the good news, serving the poor, healing the sick, and proclaiming the kingdom of God. But now they did so with a new sense of peace. They no longer worried about reaching the top of the ladder. They knew that their journey was not about reaching a final destination. It was about living each day with faith, with love, with trust in the God who guided their every step. And so, as the years passed, the lesson of the unfinished ladder became a part of their very being. They climbed, not to reach the top, but to grow closer to God with every step. They embraced the struggles, the doubts, the uncertainties, knowing that these were not obstacles to be overcome, but sacred parts of the journey. In every village they visited, in every conversation they had, in every prayer they prayed, the disciples carried the wisdom of the unfinished ladder with them. They knew that life was not about reaching the heavens in one swift motion. It was about the climb, the slow, steady, faithful journey that brought them closer to the heart of God with every step. And so, as they looked toward the heavens, they no longer saw an unattainable destination. They saw the beauty of the journey itself, the sacredness of the climb, and they knew that with every step they took, they were already in the presence of God. For it is not the end that defines us, but every step we take in faith and love, trusting that the climb itself is the greatest gift we are given. This is end of the story. Comment Amen if you believe in Jesus' blessings. Please like this video and subscribe this channel for more Jesus story like this. May the God watch over you.